Hello there, you're watching All 24 News World News program live from Algiers. These are today's stories. President of the Republic anticipates achieving self-sufficiency in 2025 and holds the positive results achieved by the agricultural sector. Libyan heads of Presidential Council and of National Unity Government lay foundations for consolidating financial institutions. Also ahead in our news, Zionist army tightens siege on all entrances of Jericho City while settlers carry on their terrorist operations in several areas of the West Bank in Palestine. Also next in our news, situation around Bakhmut is worsening according to Zelensky, who considers the provision of F-16 fighter jets the only solution to push back Russia. Hello again and welcome to the program. First off in our news, Algerian President Mr. Abdelmajid Tebboune estimated that Algeria will achieve self-sufficiency in the agricultural field within 2025. In a speech during the opening ceremony of the National Conference on Agriculture, organized under the theme of Agriculture for Sustainable Food Security, President Tebboune stressed the need to place food security at the top of the government priorities and at the heart of their strategy.
ومش بعيد علينا باش نوصل اكتفاء في بعض المواد الأساسية واللي رانا نستوردها وقادرين ماشي غير ننتجها باش نستهلك، قادرين على الاكتفاء الذاتي وقادرين نصدر. اليوم لازم هذه الأمور تتوفر بهذه الكيفية هذه اللي ندخلوا في السياسة اللي رانا نتغنوا بها منذ زمان، هي تخلص من المحروقات، من تبعية المحروقات.
Algerian president also considered the sovereignty of the political and economic decisions of Algeria as a subject to reaching self-sufficiency, especially in relation to the development of grain and heading towards export by raising the production level.
الحبوب هي الأساس. أولا ثقلها في ميزانية الدولة معروف. ثانيا رانا ماشيين إذا تواصلت الأحداث مثل ما هي اليوم في أوروبا وفي غير أوروبا إلى ندرة الحبوب. اليوم راكم تشوفوا واش راه صاري في العالم. الندرة بدأت تمس حتى أوروبا، حتى الدول المنتجة بدأت تمسها الندرة في بعض المواد. إذن الإنسان اللي يبغي يمشي رافع راسه ويقول كلمته، لازم يضمن التغذية نتاعو. نتمنى إن شاء الله باش كل التدابير التقنية اللي تكلمنا عليها سابقا تطبق لأنها هي الحل.
The Algerian head of state welcomed the positive results achieved over the past few years by the agricultural sector, which accounts for about 15% of the gross domestic product.
إننا بالرغم من التقلبات التي عرفتها الأسواق العالمية جراء الأزمة الصحية وتداعيات الاضطرابات الجيوسياسية، نقف اليوم بارتياح على ما تحقق من نتائج إيجابية خلال السنوات الأخيرة، حيث ساهم قطاع الفلاحة بأكثر من 14.7% من الناتج الداخلي الخام في سنة 2022. تقدم تاع الفلاحة تاع السنة هذه الحمد لله زادت بنسبة 1000 مليار دينار، شيء لا يستهان به، يعني ما يقارب 9 أو 10 مليار دولار. قفز القطاع إلى 4550 مليار دينار، أي بما يساوي 35 مليار دولار، يعني نسبة معتبرة جدا جدا جدا. معناها أننا في الطريق صحيح ولو أن فينا في نصف الطريق، ولكن اتجاهنا صحيح، وإن شاء الله نوصل إلى الأهداف المسطرة.
President of the Republic also ordered to necessarily adopt new standards in desert agriculture that could produce twice a year, which allows the self-sufficiency in grain in the south.
الفلاحة في الجنوب تبغي لا دوبل كولتور، تنتج مرتين في السنة، مش مرة في السنة كما الشمال. ولايات الجنوب قادرة تنتج 100% نتاع الحاجيات من لي فوراج نتاع الشبع. السنة هذه نزيد نعزز هذا التوجه اللي نتكلم عليه ونعطي حوافز. هذا اللي يدير لا دوبل كولتور لازم نعطيه حوافز.
To a different story now, Major General Seyit Chengriha, Chief of Staff of the National People's Army, received on Tuesday at the headquarters of the Army General Staff the Director of the International Cooperation Administration of the Saudi Arabia Ministry, co-chairman of the Algerian-Saudi Joint Commission for Military Cooperation. According to the Defense Ministry statement, during the meeting, the two sides held discussions on the state of military cooperation between the two brotherly countries and exchanged analyses and views on issues of common interest. Minister of East Timor, Adalija Manyu, today called on the UN Human Rights Council in Geneva to pay special attention to the human rights situation of the Sahrawi people, deploring the policies implemented by the Moroccan occupation of the occupied Sahrawi territories and the lack of progress to enable the Sahrawi people to exercise their right to self-determination.
We draw the Council's attention to the situation of the people of Western Sahara. We also regret the continuation of the Moroccan occupation and the lack of progress towards a referendum of self-determination. We reiterate the need to guarantee the right of self-determination of the Sahrawi people in accordance with the Charter of the United Nations.
To a different story now, on Tuesday, the head of the Libyan Presidential Council held a meeting with the head of the National Unity Government, Abdelhamid Beiba, which was attended by the governor of the Central Bank of Libya. A statement from the Presidential Council indicated that the meeting discussed the national and international consensus on fair management of resources, the Libyan leadership's confirmation of financial arrangements, spending priorities for the year 2023, and the assessment of the development path for the year 2022. Still in Libya, moments after the announcement of the UN envoy to Libya, Abdoulaye Bathily, about the features of the new initiative towards elections, the House of Representatives and the Supreme State Council expressed their rejection and criticism, which multiplies concerns about the future of the crisis in Libya. More with Salman Asib in this report.
12 years after the Libyan revolution, and despite the persistent negotiations and initiatives, political tensions in the country remain high, creating major legitimacy crisis, in addition to the widespread public frustration. Thus, in the event that the dispute continues between the State Council and the House of Representatives, Abdoulaye Bathily will be forced to put forward an initiative in which he aimed at enabling the organization and holding off presidential and legislative elections. Earlier, Bathily briefed the UN Security Council, Antonio Guterres, in New York about his willing to launch this Libyan high-level panel for elections.
I've decided to launch an initiative aimed at enabling the organization and holding of presidential and legislative elections in 2023. This panel would be responsible for facilitating the adoption of a legal framework and a roadmap associated with a timetable for the holding of elections in 2023, and advancing a consensus around related issues, such as security elections and the adoption of a code of conduct for candidates.
According to Bathily, the mechanism would bring together all relevant Libyan actors, including representatives of political institutions together, and hope the elections could unify the divided nation.
The proposed mechanism will bring together all relevant Libyan stakeholders, including representatives of political institutions, major political figures, security officials, tribal leaders, civil society organizations, security actors, women, and youth representatives.
as the continuous tensions between the Supreme Court, the Parliament, and other active institutions in the scene got worse again. UN envoy opened fire on the Consultative State Council and the House of Representatives from inside the Security Council, stressing that they had not succeeded until today on agreeing on a constitutional basis for holding elections.
To date, the political process remains protracted and falls short of the aspirations of Libyans who seek to elect their leaders and reinvigorate their political institutions.
During last week's meeting of the African Union's high-level Committee on Libya, Antonio Guterres pointed out that the external interference has fueled Libya's descent into conflict. So far, the plan seems vague and more details are needed because the efforts to bring together various Libyan parties were taken before, yet they failed. So the hopes are high, and everyone wants to understand what's really different in this initiative.
Authorities in Bamako announced that the president of the transitional period in Mali, Assimi Goïta, had received the draft of the new constitution for the country in its amended form. The transitional presidency in Mali contented itself with announcing Goïta's receipt of the final draft of the new constitution without disclosing its content. The statement of the transitional presidency quoted Goïta as confirming that the final document he received would embody the hope of the entire nation for the establishment of a true democracy. In Africa still, the official preliminary Nigerian presidential election results from the National Electoral Commission indicate that Bola Ahmed Tinubu of the ruling party led with more than 4 million votes, compared to 3 million for Atiku Abubakar from the main opposition party, then the candidate of the Workers' Party, Peter Obi. With the announcement of the official results in 14 of the 36 states in the country and in the federal capital, Abuja. However, the opposition parties in Nigeria have called for the presidential election to be scrapped, neither free or fair.
INEC, are they conducting free and fair election in this country? The international observers, they notice it. There are some places they didn't vote. So Obasanjo is saying the chairman, those places they didn't vote, let them go back and conduct election there, so that we can remain one Nigeria.
To Middle East now, the Zionist occupation army continues tightening the siege on all entrances of Jericho city. This comes as Zionist settlers carry on their terrorist operation in several areas of the West Bank. Let's find out more with Islam Sid in this report.
The Zionist occupation forces arrested 2 more Palestinians north of Jericho after it detained 7 others from different areas of the occupied West Bank. The occupying forces set up military barriers on the entrances to northern Hebron. Similarly, the occupation army closed all entries to the city of Jericho, as settlers who are under their protection carry on their attacks on the city for the 2nd day in a row. Palestinian reports said the settlers committed shootings, arson attacks, and beat Palestinians with metal rods and rocks. These violent acts extended to health workers and sick children as well. According to local media, reports Zionist settlers attacked a Palestinian ambulance on Monday night while transporting a sick child from Jenin to an intensive care unit in Ramallah, and said that the child arrived at the clinic 3 hours late.
Following an attack by settlers, a Palestinian woman was wounded at dawn on Tuesday, targeting an ambulance at Jenin State Hospital while passing from Zatra, where he was transporting a 12-year-old sick child. The child's mother was also injured by settlers breaking the glass of the ambulance, which managed to reach Ramallah.
Thousands of Palestinians protested and condemned the massacre committed by the Zionist settlers and soldiers against the Palestinian civilian population in the West Bank, particularly in the town of Hawara and its neighboring villages.
We will not leave our heroic people prey to the occupation and its criminal settlers. We are facing a difficult test in which we have to show loyalty to our roots. Our sons and Palestinian people are ready to confront the injustice, arson, murder, and defiling the holy places. The demonstration is only one step among others that it will take in solidarity with and support of the Palestinian people in the West Bank, especially in the town of Hawara and neighboring villages.
On Sunday night, settlers carried out about 300 attacks in the towns of Huwara, which resulted in the death of a Palestinian and injured nearly 390 others, in addition to the burning and destruction of dozens of homes and cars. The occupation army was aware of the intention of the settlers but did nothing to prevent them.
Egyptian Foreign Minister Sameh Shoukry visited Turkey on Monday as a sign of friendship and solidarity following the powerful earthquake. This was the first trip to Ankara in 10 years due to strained relations between Cairo and Ankara. The Egyptian foreign minister was welcomed by his Turkish counterpart, who said that the visit is extremely important and meaningful, and it's considered as a start in both countries' ties. On his part, Sameh Shoukry said during a news conference that people of both countries have expectations about the future to restore relations to their former levels. Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan announced in a statement that the construction of 3,000 homes in the earthquake areas of southern Turkey will be carried out following an inspection visit to Adıyaman state. Erdogan confirmed the government's continued intensive work to assist those affected by the earthquake. According to President Zelensky, the situation around Bakhmut is worsening, and the only means to push Russia back is the F-16 jets, while his Russian counterpart says that Russians will use all the means to defend themselves and rights. Let's follow the details with Sofian Kinturi in this report.
The Russia-Ukraine conflict is getting tense, and the military situation around Bakhmut is increasingly difficult, according to President Volodymyr Zelensky, who reiterated his call on Monday for the West to send him F-16 fighter jets as the only way to advance.
Due such strikes, we need the aviation component of the air defense. Of course, I'm constantly in touch with our commanders. Special attention is paid to the situation in the east, especially in the Donetsk region. In the Bakhmut sector, the situation is constantly becoming more difficult. The enemy is constantly destroying everything that can be used to protect our positions for fortification and defense. Our soldiers defending the area around Bakhmut are true heroes.
Meanwhile, the Russian President Vladimir Putin said on Tuesday that Russia will use all the ways to defend its population and its lands from any threat.
We must respond to every threat to our national security, and we will use all necessary means for this. The activities of those who try to divide Russian society using separatist, nationalist, and neo-Nazi tendencies must be exposed and suppressed.
As for the nuclear file, it seems that Russia will not resume participation in the START nuclear arms reduction treaty with the US until Washington listens to Moscow's position.
The condition must change somehow. The conceptual attitude must change. The countries of the collective West, led by the United States of America, must change their conceptual attitude to their understanding of our country's concerns regarding its own security, as well to their understanding of the principle of indivisibility of security, meaning the security of one country cannot be ensured at the expense of the security of another.
A new threat on the conflict rises after Tuesday's report of the Russian Defense Ministry, in which Moscow says that the US is preparing a provocation in Ukraine using toxic chemicals.
On February 22nd, an influential American NGO held a conference on events in Ukraine. Speaking at the event, a former US ambassador to Russia, John Sullivan, said, and I quote,
Russian troops plan to deploy chemical weapons in the area of the special military operation.
We regard this information as an intention of the United States themselves and their accomplices to carry out a provocation in Ukraine using toxic chemicals.
The path to ending the conflict seems far away, as Ukraine says no talks will take place until Russia pulls back its troops from every Ukrainian state, while Moscow is not willing to give up on the regions of Donetsk, Luhansk, Zaporizhia and Kherson.
In a related matter, NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg on Tuesday reiterated that Ukraine would one day become a member of the alliance, but it's a long-term perspective. He added that all NATO members have agreed that Ukraine will become a member of the alliance.
Important thing now is to support Ukraine, and then no one can tell exactly when this war ends. But when it ends, we need to ensure that history doesn't repeat itself, that President Putin cannot continue to attack neighbors. And therefore, we need to strengthen the military capabilities of Ukraine, but also look for frameworks that can ensure that President Putin, Russia, doesn't invade Ukraine yet another time.
Jens Stoltenberg also said negotiations over Finland and Sweden's bids to join the defense alliance were making progress.
We are making progress. A couple of weeks ago, I met with President Erdogan, and we agreed to have a meeting with Finland, Sweden, Turkey in Brussels next week. My message is that both Finland and Sweden have delivered on what they promised in the trilateral agreement they made with Turkey last June in Madrid. So the time is now to ratify and to fully welcome both Finland and Sweden as members.
Still in relation with the file, U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken stated on Tuesday that if Beijing violates its sanctions on Russia as a result of the Ukraine war, Washington will not hold back in taking action against Chinese companies and individuals. Blinken told reporters that if China gives Moscow lethal assistance in the conflict, it will cause serious problems for Beijing in its relations with other nations. This is his first trip to the region as the top diplomat for the Biden administration.
We did very clearly warn China about the implications and consequences of going through with providing such support. We will not hesitate, for example, to target Chinese companies or individuals that violate our sanctions or otherwise engage in supporting the Russian war effort.
To another topical news that is making headline in the U.S., President Joe Biden stated on Tuesday that his budget proposal to the U.S. Congress on March 9th will include some higher taxes, including those on billionaires, but won't go against his promise to keep rates for those Americans earning less than $400,000 per year.
On March the 9th, I'm going to lay down in detail every single thing, every tax that's out there that I'm proposing, and no one over making less than $400,000 is going to pay a penny more than taxes. But lay it out by March 9th, everything, and what we're going to cut, what we're going to spend, what we're going to do. Just lay it on the table. And I've invited them, to Republicans, they should do the same thing, lay their proposal on the table.
To Latin America, Tesla will build a new plant in northern Mexico, the country's president said on Tuesday, making a push by the electric vehicle maker to broaden operation outside the U.S. in a deal said by source to be worth at least $1 billion. Without providing details, President Andrés Manuel López Obrador said the whole Tesla company was coming to Mexico, describing the investment as an automotive plant that would be very big, and noting that potential investment in batteries was still pending. For more news making headlines around the globe, here's the news in brief by Zahra Frujani.
Former Pakistani Prime Minister Imran Khan was granted protective bail by two courts in Islamabad on Tuesday, providing him respite till March 9th in cases that range from gathering illegal funds for his political party to inciting violence against state officials. Hundreds of supporters followed Khan on his way to court on Tuesday, chanting and covering the car with flower petals. Farmers in Argentina staged a protest in Santa Fe province on Tuesday to demand lower taxes and a better exchange rate for their exports, amid a prolonged economic slump and a historic drought that has battered crops and agricultural output. Farmers are asking the government for less burdensome interventionist trade policies and the elimination of export taxes. After a 42-kilometer race across Western Sahara, hundreds of runners arrived at the Samara Sahrawi refugee camp in Algeria's Tindouf on Tuesday, exhausted but proud to be supporting the people of Western Sahara. The Solidarity Sahara Marathon is part of an initiative to support the Sahrawi children living in the refugee camps around Tindouf. New York City woke up to its heaviest snowfall of the season on Tuesday. According to the National Weather Service, Central Park's total snow accumulation was over 45 centimeters. Snow began falling on Monday evening but had largely turned into a mix of sleet and rain by the time commuters set out for work early Tuesday.
Well, that's the end for today's news. For more, you can always visit our social media platforms. From me and the rest of the team, thank you for tuning in. Bye for now.